Joseph Kosinski has already made my favorite movie this year in Maverick. Now he's back with another one, Spiderhead. Let's talk about that right now. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel today for another review. And today we're going to be reviewing the film Spiderhead, which is coming to Netflix June 17th. Now, I'm starting it off by saying that this film is derived from a short film which I have not seen, Escape from Spiderhead. And the reason I even looked that up is because I thought this idea of this film was so elaborate. You can tell that it felt like an extension to something. You can almost sense that it exists in a bigger universe or whatnot. So I just started to dig and say, where did this idea come from? Because the other thing about it is, if not, then I'm like, well, this is the most experimental film I have seen in a long time. The ideas in this film is so elaborate, so I will almost go say exotic, because like it's a very unique concept, and that I like it, you know, and it's very absurd. Like the tone is absurd, like by all means. But like I love that this was unique, and like I said, I think the best word that comes to mind is experimental. And if you've ever attended a film festival, then you know, like, there's a whole genre of films that are labeled experimental in terms of it just being something so unique, so out of the box that, hey, it does not exist in one genre. It's just experimental because it's trying a whole bunch of different stuff. But that's no here nor there. In this one, though, in this film, Steve Abnesti, all these names, is played by Chris Hemsworth. He runs this facility. I was gonna call it a jail, but facility, because it does house inmates. And basically, inmates, instead of them having just a normal incarceration, they can opt out to come here. And here they are basically attached to this device that basically where Steve can administer these different dosage of mind-altering drugs, and they're experimental for purposes. You know, once they can kind of test and see how these drugs work, then yeah, of course, big pharma and all that other stuff comes into play, and money is involved and whatnot. But it's very abstract, because these different drugs, as they are labeled, all the names of the drugs, they're hard to keep up with. But the best way to kind of explain what the drugs are basically looking at like the prefix of them. So that way you can kind of have an idea of like what does the drugs kind of do, because like I think there's like 6 different ones, and they all have very different characteristics involved with them and so on. But let's be honest now, with everything that sounds so good about this place, obviously there has to be some other catch to it. And while like all the experiments and testing and whatnot are supposed to be for the better good, we understand how all drugs work, you know, like it's very much a given why everything seems so much better. I mean, why would you know, take inmates from bars and jumpsuits and put them into a futuristic looking Airbnb and say, yeah, we just need you to take a few tests, no problems, no worries, you're okay. But like, yeah, and this is all for the better sake of society. Like, yeah, we all know there has to be some catch to this, right? But one of the inmates in Jeff, played by Miles Teller, he is alongside of Lizzie, played by Journey Smollett. They are fond of each other, and everybody here is an inmate, so obviously everybody has a past, no matter how ugly it could be, but they're here for a reason because of those pasts. But to kind of find a little bit of comfort in somebody is special. Not to mention that some of these drugs could actually invoke emotions towards one another. But these two are, their chemistry together is very organic, it's very real. They find, like I said, sort of peace in one another. And when Jeff decides to kind of break off the chains a little bit, because Jeff at one point is like considered like the model, I was gonna say civilian, but the model inmate in here, because he does what he's supposed to do. He takes all the trials and no matter how crazy they are, he shows up every single day, and with that, you know, that makes the testing for them a lot easier, a lot very efficient, you know. But when he decides to sort of go down his own route of decision making, where he starts to basically, you know, step outside the box, where you were once accustomed to just doing what you were told, but now you're up to making your own decision. This starts to create conflict, because now he starts to uncover the truth, and uncovering the truth realizes that, hey, this isn't what it seems, and really nobody can be trusted. And he also is in dear concern over the protection of Lizzie. So, you know, it's a lot of things going on. To make this really short, you have inmates inside of a facility all being injected by all these different types of drugs that cause all these very different characteristics, but more or less they're drugs that, you know, when using, they make you they make you basically obedient to commands, and when you decide to go against that, then you start to think about the discrepancy of the drugs. Do they work? Do they don't work? If they do work, then obviously you put it into production and you make a lot of money, but if not, then you have to continue to further trial and testing and whatnot. So that's kind of what's going on with that. Steve Amnesty, played by Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth's performance in this is probably one of the best I've seen in a very long time. I have to say, seeing him in a different light is also very refreshing. You know, typically he's always like the really like good guy, or like the comedic act and whatnot. But in this one, he's a little bit of a hard read. He still is very charming, but he's still a little bit of a hard read. And seeing him in this fashion, I really enjoyed this character, for real. Miles Teller, I think that, you know, I've said before, I have not been the biggest fan of his in a while, but man, this year he stepped it up. And not stepped it up because I don't think he was ever not good. I just didn't like him in his performance as much. I have a little bit of a change of heart of him this year after Maverick, and then this one I saw him in a different light as well too, and I thought he did a really good job. Him alongside of Journey, I thought they had good chemistry. And quite frankly, you know, you start to want to see the story of them two get fleshed out a little bit more, because the moments they did share together felt like it was magical. Felt like they could have really been doing a lot more on screen. And you didn't get them on screen together too much because it was really about Jeff. It was Jeff, as I said, like the token inmate who was going through all these trials, and he was, you know, like the poster child, but yet also the guinea pig. So he was always focusing on him and the experiments with him and other inmates. So we just see him, and even alongside of Steve at time, because of just how much, you know, as I said, when it came down to them needing him to do something, need him to be part of a test, he was the proper person to do so. But yeah, beyond that, there's a lot of other different characters in here, a lot of funny moments, I should say. But overall, things at times feel a lot all over the place. It gets a little crazy. And I think also the film was a little bit longer than I would have liked. I think about the second half of the film, I just was like kind of just hanging on, because, you know, the whole mystery factor wasn't so evident that it was a mystery. It also at times felt like maybe you missed something, because the way how they were just introducing these drugs and then the effects of the drugs, and you're just wondering, like, they're just naming the names of these drugs. You're just like, did we ever even talk about that? Like, you know what I mean? And that's why I said the best way to kind of have a clue of what these drugs do is eyeing on to the prefix of these drugs, of the names, and hopefully that gives you a little bit of indication of what they possibly could be. But yeah, sometimes moments felt like it was just going over my head. I was like, what's happening? Like, what are they talking about and whatnot? What's like the whole mystery factor to it? You know, what's the plot that's going on here besides just the constant testing of these inmates because somebody's trying to figure out if these drugs work or not? So, you know, it's like I said, the second half of the film was a little bit of a drag, but I think by the time the third act came and you really got these actors doing what they do, things start to unfold in a better light, in a way that was more understandable to what you're watching. I liked it. So maybe just a little bit of a hard watch, but overall the performances alone I think are definitely worth a watch. And again, I had not seen the short story Escape from Spiderhead, so kind of coming in this kind of like, you know, blank, I don't mind it at all. I just think that you know, beyond like the pacing at times, I just think that like this dark, funny, psychological thriller, I guess, really could have been a little bit more better paced to be more enjoyable. Maybe chopped down just a little bit and whatnot. Or maybe even just a little bit of an easier, I don't know, like reference to what these drugs were or something. Because I don't know. For me, I just feel like sometimes they were just kind of talking over my head. I don't know. So, but I still think it's worth a watch. As I said, performances alone, Chris, Miles, and Journey. I think that, like, you know, the big actors came and did what they were supposed to, and even some of the folks that had very minimum roles, I thought they were interesting as well too. And the last act, as I said, it's completely off the hinges, unchained. It's hilarious. It's definitely the ending that we needed for more of a lackluster middle part of the film. So yep, check it out. Jump in the comments, let me know your thoughts about it when you do, and as always, stay tuned for more reviews very soon.